All right, let's look at the set, which is about fair consulting and sexual harassment. It says in recent years, complaints of sexual harassment at fair consulting had increased exponentially. Okay, so recent years, complaints of sexual harassment, fair consulting is the name of the company, had increased exponentially. All right, definitely a problem. Fair consulting had a gender-neutral anti-sexual harassment policy and a committee to adjudicate on complaints. Okay, so this is clearly looks important. It had a gender-neutral sexual harassment policy, right? So all genders were considered equally. It wasn't sort of only about a specific gender. All genders were covered. It was gender neutral. Anti-sexual harassment policy and a committee to adjudicate on complaints. Okay, so they had a committee that would adjudicate on complaints, which basically means that reviewing complaints and passing a judgment on those complaints, right? Okay. During the hearing of complaints, allegations and counter allegations would fly thick and fast. Okay, which is expected, right? I mean, sexual harassment is a very volatile topic. So if there's a sexual harassment complaint and you have the complainant and the accuser in the same room, and the committee is trying to adjudicate on those complaints, there would be a lot of volatility, right? I mean, it would be very intense. That atmosphere would be very, very intense, right? Allegations and counter allegations. You can expect a lot of allegations and counter allegations, right? I mean, I can sort of visualize that room. It can't be a calm discussion, right? It has to be a very intense discussion, very volatile discussion. Probably people don't listen to each other, right? The complainant is saying an allegation and the defender is trying to counter it or trying to defend themselves very aggressively. So the discussion can be expected to get very aggressive and volatile, which is what the statement is saying. This made it difficult for the adjudicating committee to conclusively decide on the complaints. All right, yeah, so there was a lot of noise, a lot of intensity, very aggressive discussion, allegations and counter allegations flying left and right. So it made it difficult for the adjudicating committee to conclusively decide on the complaints, right? Okay, so definitely, I mean, this looks like this is a problem statement of the set, right? The adjudicating committee is finding it difficult to decide on the complaints because during the hearing, there was a lot of noise, aggression, and a lot of allegations and a lot of information basically from both sides. So it was making it difficult for them to decide. All right. Other aspects to notice, in recent years, the number of complaints have gone up exponentially, significantly, and the policy is gender neutral. The anti-sexual harassment policy is gender neutral at fair consulting. All right. Let's look at the questions now. All right. It says, fair consulting was mulling over 3 interventions to reduce sexual harassment cases in the workplace. Mulling means they were thinking about, pondering over. So they're thinking about 3 interventions to reduce sexual harassment cases in the workplace. Okay. Now, this is a combination question, so we can read the question first so that we can evaluate the points accordingly. Which of the following options will the employees find least ostracizing? Okay, focus on the question carefully. These options or these points are 3 interventions to reduce sexual harassment cases in the workplace. Which of the following options will the employees find least ostracizing? Ostracizing means when somebody is ostracized, they are shunned. Okay, like they are removed. Typically, they're removed from the society. The society completely rejects them. So ostracization is removal from society or removal from a group in general. So if an employee feels ostracized, that means the employee feels excluded, right? Other people are ignoring that employee, and the employee is feeling like, you know, they're alone, they're being excluded, which is what ostracized means, right? So keep that in mind. We have to pick options that the employees will find least ostracizing. All right. Okay. Let's look at the options now. Educate employees about the company's anti-sexual harassment policy. Okay. If we are educating employees about the company's anti-sexual harassment policy, why would this lead to ostracization? Why would any employee feel excluded? Okay. The company is just educating you, right? It's creating awareness about the anti-sexual harassment policy, obviously, to reduce sexual harassment cases. So this will not make employees feel ostracized in any way, right? So this is a good answer, right? We're talking about least ostracizing. Of course, we have to compare 1, 2, and 3, but this is a good answer. So let's park this, right? Because I don't see any reason why employees should feel ostracized when they're just being educated. Okay, so this is a good answer. All right. Profile employees with a propensity to engage in acts of sexual harassment. Now, this is very tricky. Profiling employees with a propensity. Propensity means tendency. Okay, so what the company is doing is the company is trying to identify which employees have a tendency to engage in acts of sexual harassment, then profiling them, like sort of creating, let's say in simple words, and creating a list of those employees, and then potentially monitoring them. Okay, so here it says tendency to engage in acts of sexual harassment. So the company, these employees have not engaged in acts of sexual, not sexually harassed anyone yet. The company is looking at these employees, looking at certain traits, we don't know which traits, and then judging which employee has a higher tendency to engage in act of sexual harassment. Okay, and then profiling them in a separate group, a separate list. Profiling is always problematic. Okay, I'll give you another example. So in airport, when you have security checks, right? Especially when you're on international travel, when you're traveling internationally, security checks happen, right? Now everybody goes through a routine security check, all the passengers. Some passengers are asked to come for a special additional security check. So after the regular security check, you'll be asked to come for an additional one. Now there are accusations, right? And there's research also done on this, that blacks, for instance, are profiled more than whites. Okay. So the security agents are looking at certain traits, probably looking at color, and then deciding that, oh, maybe blacks have a higher tendency to commit these violations. So let's subject them to an additional check. So more blacks as compared to whites. So any kind of profiling based on personality traits, color, gender, whatever, is usually problematic. And in this case, this is definitely problematic. I mean, these employees haven't engaged in anything, but you're profiling them based on certain traits. So this is problematic. This is definitely bound to make employees feel ostracized, especially the ones that are profiled. Obviously, they will feel excluded and ostracized, right? Now, if you compare 2 with 1, 1 is definitely least ostracizing. 2 is majorly ostracizing. 1, there is no ostracization. So 1 is definitely a better answer than 2. 2 is gone. Okay, we can remove 2. So remove the obvious ones. Number 3, discipline sexual offenders. Okay, now this can be a little tricky, but before that, remember we have eliminated 2. So based on that, we can eliminate certain options. This is gone. Okay, this is gone because 1 and 2 can't be equal. 1 is clearly not, there is no ostracization there, and 2 is also gone. You can't consider 2 as least ostracizing. Okay, now if you look at this, there is a tie between B and D, Bravo and Delta. Bravo says 1 only, okay, which we thought there is no ostracization there. And number 3 says discipline sexual offender. So you have to choose one of them. Now think about it. Even if this is a little tricky, think about between 1 and 3, clearly 1 doesn't have any ostracization. It's simple education. Whereas 3, if you're disciplining sexual offenders, the sexual offenders would feel ostracized. Right? Now you can say that, no, but they're sexual offenders. They should be disciplined. Yes, correct. Absolutely. But the question is, which of the following options will the employees find least ostracizing? First of all, there is no comparison between 1 and 3. 1 is definitely least ostracizing. In 3, again, it talks about disciplining sexual offenders. And in this case, obviously, the sexual offenders would feel ostracized. That is what the question is asking. So between 1 and 3, it's very clear that 1 is least ostracizing. Don't confuse yourself too much. Always look for elimination and then try to come up with the right answer efficiently. So 1 is definitely least ostracizing, and therefore Bravo is the answer. Okay. Right. Let's go to question 2. The CEO of Fair Consulting wanted the adjudicating committee to reduce the number of errors while deciding on sexual harassment complaints. Okay. Now remember, connected to the set, remember the committee had difficulty. That was a problem statement, right? Allegations were flying thick and fast, left and right. And hence, the adjudicating committee had problems in conclusively determining conclusively making the decision, conclusively deciding on the complaints. It was difficult for them due to the number of allegations that were happening in those discussions. All right, so the CEO wants the committee to reduce the number of errors. So probably the difficulty was causing errors or maybe some other problems, but the CEO wants the committee to reduce the number of errors while deciding on sexual harassment complaints. And obviously this is very important, right? If you falsely accuse of somebody of sexual harassment in a company, I mean, you could probably end their career. So it's a very serious situation. The employees suggested that the committee could do the following to reduce errors in judgment. So the employees gave suggestions, okay? And they gave a number of suggestions which could help the committee reduce the errors in their judgment. Again, it's a combination question, so let's read the question first. From the following, choose the most effective sequence that would help the committee to arrive at the right decision. Read the question very carefully. That's very important in BDM. They're asking for a sequence, which implies that order is important. Okay, the order of options that you choose is important. So choose the most effective sequence that would help the committee to arrive at the right decision, or choose the most effective sequence that would help the committee to reduce the number of errors. Okay, but it says sequence. And also, if you look at the options, you can see that sequence is important. How? There is A, which says 1, 2, 4. And there is B, which says 2, 4, 1. Both have the same points, but in different order. This also indicates that sequence is important. Okay, and of course, there is the word sequence, but also the way the options are constructed, you have to look at the order. All right. Okay, now let's evaluate the points and let's see what's happening there. Number one, listen to the arguments of both the complainant and the accused together. Remember, we're trying to reduce errors. Now, what was the original problem in the set? Allegations and counter allegations were flying from both the sides. And there was a lot of noise. That's its inference that we're drawing. There was a lot of aggression. That was the inference that we're drawing. And that's why the committee had difficulty. Now, if you're listening to the arguments of both the complainant and the accused together, it's going to result into the same issue, right? Allegations and counter allegations from both sides. So would this reduce errors in judgments? Not so much. Let's park it. Okay, the reason we're parking it because listening is important in these situations. You have to listen to them, right? So yes, it would not solve that problem, but we can't eliminate it because listening is important. So we're going to park it for now. Number two, listen to the arguments of both the complainant and the accused separately. This is good. If you're listening to them separately, the noise will reduce, right? You can comprehensively listen to the complainant. You can comprehensively listen to the accused or to the defendant, and then decide. The noise will go down, the aggression will go down. So this is a good situation. This will enable the committee to listen effectively and comprehensively to both sides. So this is good. This should be a part of your effective sequence. All right. Okay. Now we've picked two. Okay. Let's look at the options that have two. Two is present everywhere. You could have done this before as well, and you would have seen that two is present everywhere. So two is definitely important. Okay, that's a given because it's present everywhere. Now, before we go to the next three options, think about this. You're listening to them separately. Do you think listening to them together is also important? Think about this. We're listening to them separately. So we've listened to the complainant and the accused. But what about cross-examination? What about giving the accused a chance to respond to the complainant's allegations? And think about it. In a court of law, that's what happens, right? The plaintiff and the defendant are present together. Okay, there can be separate meetings, but ultimately they're present together. Okay, and then there is a cross-examination by their lawyers. The defendant is given a chance to defend themselves. So the defendant will hear what the plaintiff has to say and then respond to it accordingly. So you have to give them a chance you have to give the defendant a chance to respond to the allegations, and then also give the complainant a chance to respond to that as well. So there has to be a cross-examination. Without the cross-examination, the process would be incomplete. Sorry. So now if you think about it, between 2 and 1, think about the sequence. You would want to listen to them separately, and then you would want to listen to them together. Okay, the other way around will not work. One can't come before because one is what is creating the original problem for the committee. So one can't come first. Two can come first separately, and then for cross-examination, one can come later. Okay, now let's evaluate. So we are looking at a sequence, and sequence is important. we're looking at a potential sequence of 2, 1. So look at the options now. 1, 2. This is clearly wrong. 1 can't come in the beginning. It would create the same problem that's mentioned in the set. So this is gone. Okay. 1, 2 again, you can't have this, right? C says 2, 3, 4 doesn't have 1. 1 is important. In conjunction with 2, 1 is important. You can't exclude 1. So we're going to eliminate this as well. Okay. Now we're left with 2, 4, 1 and 2, 1, 5. Okay. Now the sequence is important. Let's evaluate this. 2, 4, 1. 2 is separately. Then comes 4. Take the help of a retired judge. And then comes 1, listening to them together. Why would you put the judge in the middle? Even if you're taking the help of a retired judge, you would want the judge to take the ultimate decision, right? So that would come after listening. The listening is complete. After the cross-examination is complete, the judge's duty would be to pass the final judgment. So why would you put 4 in the middle? That doesn't make sense. Okay. So 2 and 1 should ideally come together. First, you listen to them separately, and then you listen to them together. So that's why you can't pick B, okay, because 4 in the middle doesn't make sense. This is the only option that's remaining. 2, 1 should be together, 1 followed by 2. And then finally, it says 5. Let's look at that. Hire a forensic expert to verify evidences. Now, this option might not sound reasonable to you, but think about it. A forensic expert, and look at the definition of forensic in the dictionary. A forensic expert would apply scientific methods to evaluate evidence. Now, this evidence can be anything. This evidence can be substance. This evidence can be an object. Okay. So in a sexual harassment case, that can become important. Let's say there was force involved. It was a particularly egregious sexual harassment case, right? There's force involved. So hair or nails or anything that can be taken into evidence, or the objects around, fingerprints, that can become important as well. Fingerprints, that would be most important, right? So a forensic expert would definitely add value here and would help in reducing the errors, but that would come after you've heard completely. So 2, 1, which involves listening, and then 5, this is the right answer. Okay. All right. Don't worry. I'm going to explain 3 and 4 as well. This is the efficient way of solving this problem. With combination questions, if you start evaluating each option upfront, you would get confused. So always try to eliminate based on obvious choices. We knew that, okay, 2 was everywhere. So that doesn't help you to eliminate. 1, we determined that it should be used in conjunction because that is important. And then we started eliminating. Do that. That's the better way of solving, most efficient way of solving these problems. But let's look at the other options. 3, involving a member of Women's Commission. Now their policy is gender neutral. Okay. So involving a member of Women's Commission, that becomes, that might not be the best way because it's gender neutral. Second, involving a member of Women's Commission, do we know that this member, whether they are trained in sexual harassment or not? How do we know? Just because they're a member of Women's Commission doesn't mean they're automatically trained in adjudicating sexual harassment complaints. So that's why we're going to remove this option. Primary reason is we don't know whether they are trained in this area. Second, it's a gender neutral policy. Take the help of a retired judge might be okay, but the same question, is the judge trained in adjudicating sexual harassment complaints? I mean, judges they have different capabilities, right? Law is very vast. You have so many different facets of law. Now, do we know if the judge is an expert in adjudicating sexual harassment? We don't know, right? So that's a bit of a problem there. And also, we were evaluating 4 in the middle. Putting a judge in the middle doesn't make sense between 2 and 1, right? So that's why we eliminated that as well, right? It's a tricky one. But if you solve it strategically through elimination, you can come to the right answer. All right. Let's go to question 3. Of late, the adjudicating committee received a complaint from a junior female consultant. Okay, so that's important. They've received a complaint from a junior female consultant. Her immediate boss cracked a body joke about her in the office tuck shop. All right, immediate boss cracked a body joke. Body joke would mean a joke which has sexual connotations, right? A vulgar joke. So immediate boss cracked a body joke in the office. Okay. When the committee probed the alleged misconduct, they identified an independent witness. Very good. So they've identified an independent witness which can come in handy to resolve this case. Excuse me. She agreed to give her testimony to the committee, she meaning the independent witness. However, she was unsure if she would like to be identified either by the complainant or the accused. Right? Typically, I mean, think about it, witnesses would have this issue, right? This is an independent witness who's ready to give a testimony, who's ready to give a side about this, this alleged misconduct, okay, that has been reported. But the witness is unsure if she would like to be identified. So she prefers to be anonymous, okay? And think about it. Why would a witness want to be anonymous? Think about it. In any case, a witness would want to be anonymous for the primary reason of protecting themselves. They would be worried, right? I mean, let's say if the witness comes out and says that, yes, this alleged misconduct definitely happened and the boss is responsible for that. The witness would worry about their prospects in the company, right? This can be used against them, right? I mean, if the boss is not fired, the boss continues to remain in the company, that the boss can use it against the witness. Or even if the boss is fired from the company, other people in the management can use it against. Okay, like this witness would become one of those people who is going out and speaking against other fellow employees. That can become problematic in an office, right? So not surprised that the witness wants to remain anonymous. The convener of the committee was confused about the stance to be taken on the witness's concern. All right, so that's the problem statement. So the witness's concern is that they wouldn't like to be identified. They are unsure if they would like to be identified. And the convener is confused about the stance to be taken in this case. The convener has to take a decision, right? Whether they should remain anonymous or they should not remain anonymous. So that's the problem statement. Now let's look at the question. Which of the following will be the best stance to be taken by the convener? Okay, the convener has to take the best decision in this case with respect to the witness concern of remaining anonymous. And this has to be the best option. Let's evaluate the options. The convener should not allow witnesses' identity to be revealed. Okay, this sounds good, right? We would want to protect the witness's identity, as either the accused or the complainant can use the witness's arguments to their advantage. Okay, the convener is saying don't reveal the witness's identity, and the reason for that is either of the parties can use the witness's arguments to their advantage. Trying to think, I mean, if the identity is revealed, how would that enable the accused or the complainant to use the arguments to their advantage? Maybe there is some logic there, but it's not very clear. Let's park it. Okay, at least it says should not allow the witness's identity to be revealed. The convener should not let witness's identity to be revealed, as it might expose her to a threat either from the respondent or the accused. This looks like a reasonable reason, right? I mean, it has to be the best stance to be taken by the convener. As we discussed, the witness it's natural for the witness to feel threatened or afraid, okay, and that's why they're wanting their identity to be anonymous. So this case, the convener decides no, the identity should not be revealed to protect the witness. This looks like a good option. There's definitely sense here. Okay, let's park it. The convener should ensure that witness identifies herself, as it will ensure that she will not present frivolous proof related to the inquiry. Now you are forcing the witness to identify herself. This can't be correct. This is an independent witness. The independent witness is coming forward to help in this case. You can't force that witness to identify themselves. I mean, you are putting them in a problematic situation and they don't want to be identified. So forcing them to identify themselves cannot be the best answer. Okay, so this is not the answer. Okay, the convener should not allow witnesses' identity to be revealed. Okay, great. Because complainant can sabotage the inquiry process. Think about this. The witness's identity is revealed. How will that enable the complainant, the person who's filing the complaint, to sabotage the inquiry process? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. That can't be the primary reason. And also that can't be the primary reason to not allow the witness's identity to be revealed. You're hiding the witness's identity because you don't want the complainant to sabotage the inquiry process. That can't be the reason. It doesn't make sense. We're going to ignore it. The convener should ensure that the witness identifies themselves. Problem again. Okay, let's read it. Because both the accused and the complainant must identify themselves. This doesn't make sense. Obviously, the complainant and accused have to identify themselves. Maybe the complainant can remain anonymous. We don't know. But just because the complainant and accused are identifying themselves, that is not reason to force the witness to identify themselves. This doesn't make sense. And again, you can't force the witness to identify themselves when they don't want to. So C, D, and E is gone. We are left with A and B. Okay. B is a solid reason. You're trying to protect the witness, and that's why you're letting their identity be anonymous. A doesn't really make sense. Okay. Not allowing keeping them anonymous because you're worried that either the accused or complainant can use the witness's arguments to themselves. This is not the primary reason. The primary reason is to protect the witness, and that is in B. And that's why the answer is B here. You have to choose the best stance. So the stance is the same between A and B, but the stance has to be taken for the right reason, which is protection. Okay, so hence B is the answer.